I'm John Gurnig. Welcome back to the Fel-Pro Field Test Garage in Skokie, Illinois. Today I'm working on a 2003 Mazda6 2.3 liter engine, and belongs to an employee that came to me with a problem. Check engine lights on. It's been to another shop. They've done some work on it. Check engine lights back on again. So he brought it to me to take a look at it. I've done some initial diagnosis on it, and I believe there's an intake manifold gasket leak. I'm going to show you the steps that I've gone through to get to that diagnosis, and then we'll get into fixing the car. So the employee brought the car into me. I brought it in. Check engine light is on again. The employee had some work done at another shop. They've replaced spark plugs, wires, ignition coil, and I've plugged in my scanner, and I brought up the codes that are still stored in the memory. There are 4 codes stored in the memory of the ECM. First one's a cam sensor. I'm not worried about that one right now, but the 3 that I'm concerned with are the PO300, which is a random misfire, and the P2177 and 2187, which is the system is lean. It's running lean, which to me indicates we have a problem under the hood, either with a vacuum hose off or an intake manifold gasket leak. So I'm going to go to another screen in just a second and show you the O2 sensors. They're dead or reading very lean at idle. So I'm on my long-term fuel trim, and that's reading at 20%. So that means that the computer is compensating the lean condition by adding 20% more fuel to make this engine run properly. And that's way too high. You never want to see more than a fluctuation of 10% compensation. So let me scroll down now to my O2 sensor, the front O2 sensor, and as you can see, it's reading a pretty flat line, and it's hovering between 5 and 15 millivolts. That's very lean. That's a lean condition at idle on this engine. If I rev the engine up, the O2 comes alive, starts reading like it should. As soon as I let it come back down to idle, it goes back down into a lean condition. So now we're going to go under the hood in just a second. I'm going to smoke test it, and I'm going to show you where the leak is. So when I had the vehicle in the other day for the initial inspection, I opened up the hood, I listened under the hood, and I could hear a vacuum leak. So my next step was to get my smoke machine out. I've hooked it up, and I'm filling the intake manifold up with smoke right now. And I'm not sure if the camera's going to catch it, but coming up through between ports 3 and 4, you'll see some smoke that rises up out of there every so often. So while I'm not exactly sure where it's coming from, I have a feeling it's a bad intake manifold gasket. So my next step will be to remove the intake manifold and see where my problem is, if the gaskets have failed or if it's another issue. So based on the results of our test, my next step will be to remove the intake manifold and determine what has failed. So I'm going to start by removing the air cleaner, hoses, vacuum lines, and wiring harness, and then I'll get that intake manifold off and we'll see what's gone wrong. So I've removed the air cleaner, removed the throttle body, got it out of the way, gotten all the intake manifold bolts loose, including one tricky one here located in the center of the manifold. Had to remove under car cover. There's one manifold bolt way down at the bottom that you can only access from underneath the car. So I've got one bolt left to loosen. I'm going to pull that out, and then I'll be ready to pull the intake manifold off. I've removed the intake manifold, looked it over, and I can see some compression set on these intake gaskets. These are press in place intake manifold gaskets. But I also see a problem with the number 3 runner, or the number 3 intake manifold gasket. So I'm going to take it over to the bench and I'll let you guys see a close-up of it. I have the intake manifold on the bench, and if you come closer, take a look at the number 3 intake port, you'll see that there's a gouge or a nick in the gasket itself. So that was the source of our vacuum leak. That's what I could hear. That's when I used the smoke machine, and that's where I could see the smoke rising out of it. Couldn't see exactly where it was until I got this off, but that's the source of our problem. So I'm going to take it over to the parts washer, remove the old press and place gaskets, clean it up, and install some new Fel-Pro press and place gaskets. cleaned up the intake manifold. I've made sure that the grooves that are around each intake port are clean and dry. I'm going to be installing a Fel-Pro Perma-Dry intake manifold gasket. These are press and place gaskets. So there's one gasket for each port. In addition, in our set, you're going to find 2 EGR gaskets. Some applications have a large hole like this one does. Some have a smaller hole. We give you both gaskets, so no matter what you're working on, you're covered. So I'm going to install these gaskets, and then I'll be ready to take it over and install it on the car. I finished installing my intake gaskets on the manifold, and I'm ready to take it over the car to install the manifold on the vehicle. That'll take me about another hour or so to get everything all hooked up. But in the meantime, I hope to see you soon. I'm John Gurnig from the Fel-Pro Field Test Garage in Skokie, Illinois.